And hello, my name is Martin, and this is how to make a ladder. This was a request from a student that asked me, well, if we go down the hole of you know how I taught you all how to make a hole in your material for the landscape, and we had added a kind of like a well area, and if you were to jump down, you'd be okay, but you couldn't get back up. So what we're going to do is create a ladder. Here's actually the example of the ladder that I have made, and I'll show you how to make that mesh and make it work. And then we'll also have to do a couple of things to the first person character. So the first thing I'll do is just show you a demo that we walk up to the ladder, everything's good, our character is working the way they're supposed to. As soon as we get to the ladder, we can go up the ladder and then walk off the ladder, and then we are again moving around the way that we are supposed to. Now as far as going down the ladder, I guess if you wanted to go like that, you could get to the edge of it and then walk off the ladder and then walk away from it. Okay, otherwise you can just fall off. So, you jump up, you're on the deal, and then you can jump back down if you need to. And you can also do that next to the ladder. So being by the ladder doesn't make a difference as far as being able to fall off that edge of the platform. Okay, so to get this going, the first thing that we're going to need to do is obviously create a platform, figure out how high that platform is, or as far tall on the z-axis, so then that way you know how what size to make your ladder. From there, what we'll need to do is create a blueprint. Now, I could just show you the code real quick, and actually I think that's what I'm going to do because the code's really not all that complicated. So what we'll need to do is create a blueprint class, create an actor. Once the actor's been created, call it ladder blueprint, and if we double click into the ladder blueprint, let me bring this down. Okay, now I went looking for a ladder. I couldn't actually find a very good ladder, so I went ahead and made one. And if you look over here on the left hand side, underneath add components, what I did was I created two cubes. So this is one of the cubes, this is the other. Once I had created one, I just duplicated and put it over to the other side. You can look at the scale size of those. This is 0.25, 0.25 by 10 as far as the height of the ladder. Same thing on the other side. For these, I created cylinders. If you're looking for the cylinders, you don't see them in common. You'll actually have to scroll down until you see them in basic. You bring a cylinder in, and what I did, you can see each one of the cylinders are 1 by 1 by 0.2825. Now, when the cylinders came in, they were vertical, so I did have to put them on their side, and this is actually the length going across because because now it's at a 90-degree angle from where it started, so up is this way, or the z-axis is actually pointing in that direction. Okay, so the other thing that you're also going to need to do is you're actually going to need to merge cube and all the cylinders. So if you highlight them, so if you select the first one, go to shift, left click the second one, or the bottom one, that'll make sure that they are all selected. And then from there you can go to file and merge. Now the reason why you want to do the merge is because each one of these are essentially their own separate object, and we want the game to be to treat them as one thing. So do make sure that you select the merge. You'll get this down here. It's actually each one of the different pieces, and you'll say start the merge. Once the merge is finished, there'll be one down there that says finish merge, and that's all you'll need to do. So once that's done, I'm going to hit cancel because I've already merged mine. What that'll do is it'll make all of these be recognized by Unreal as one unit. The other thing I also did while you have them all selected is you can actually, instead of having to sit there and put the material type in there for wood, I did them all together. Now the only thing in doing that is that well, actually no, that's fine. That actually works okay. So just find, it could be metal, it could be whatever color you want the thing to be, as long as you can find a mesh or I'm sorry, not a mesh, a material that'll give you the color that you're looking for. Maybe you want this to be rock. Maybe you want this to be a solid, like a solid color. I believe, well, it also depends on what packs you guys have downloaded, what type of materials you'll have for that. The only other thing I did to the ladder was you can see kind of like this faint box that's around the outside of it. That is actually a collision setting. So if you go up to add component, scroll down, find box collision, and I renamed it ladder box collision, so it makes more sense for me. The other thing, once you've done that, you'll notice that it does go a little bit below and a little bit above. Now you got to think, when your character gets to the top of the ladder, they still need to be making contact with it, and the reason why is, if you can imagine, if you saw in the example earlier, as I got to the ladder, I was able to go down. Now the reason for that is because my character was in this collision box, because we're going to tie everything back to this collision box as far as being able to get the movement to work correctly. And then the other thing that I did was I added an arrow, just so then that way I could tell which direction was facing forward. Let me see if I can kind of move this out of the way so that you can see it. So just like on our first person character, or when you create a character, they usually have an arrow pointing out of them. That arrow lets you know which direction is forward as you're building here in this three-dimensional space, because it would be very difficult to tell what was forward or backwards. And the importance of that obviously is for when you make your collision box, that you're not putting this on the back side, that you're actually putting it on the front side, which is going to be available to the character. Because if you put this ladder, let's say, next to a box like what we saw earlier, and you did this, the character would not be touching this, and thus we would not be able to get the code that we need to out of that. So do make sure that you put the arrow in there, you figure out what direction is facing forward, and then you make sure that the trigger box itself, or the collision box, the collision box is actually facing in that direction and useful for the first person character. Now, as far as the code, if we have the ladder box selected, the ladder box collision selected, or the collision box selected, go to the event graph, and you're going to create a on begin overlap and an on end overlap. You're going to cast them both to the first person character, and these will actually be coming from the first person character, and we'll be talking about them in just a second. About they're a boolean that we created, so it's a variable that we created for the first person character that we labeled is on ladder. So if we are on the ladder, we get a check mark. If we are not on the ladder, we're going to make it a 0 or make it false. So this is a true statement. We are on the ladder. So when we go into, basically when we run into the overlap, or we begin to overlap the ladder, we're going to set off this, which basically says, hey, yes, you are on the ladder. And then on this one, we're going to say, no, we are not on the ladder. And then we'll talk about the setting here in just a second. So let's go to our first person character and see what we did. Now, in the first person character, what you're looking for is the space called move input if using blah 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 HDMI move input base. I've actually highlighted the stuff here that is actually going to be for the ladder itself, and everything else that is not highlighted is actually part of the code that was already there. It was already available. So if you look at the in-axis move forward, that was going directly to this prior to any of this code being in there. The same thing down here on the bottom. So basically what this new piece of the code will allow us to do is to be able to vertically move up. And so to start, what we'll need to do is you'll come over here to the left hand side, go underneath variables, create a new variable, name it is on ladder, and if you click on that, you'll see that currently it's false, because when we start the game, unless we're starting on a ladder, it doesn't make sense to make that variable true. Otherwise, you would just be going straight up in the air wherever it is that you are, because we would have left that condition as true. So it needs to be false, meaning that it needs to be unclicked. And then what you'll do is you'll drag off of this one right here, which is the move forward button, which is basically assigned to your, if you can imagine your WASD, or your forward, back, left, right arrows. It's assigned to the WS, and then the one down here is assigned to the AD. So this one is going AD and this one is doing WS. Those are your forward vectors or your forward movement, and this is your lateral movement, your left and right movement. All right, so we'll drag off of this, we'll create a branch, so type the word if, that'll open up the branch, and then you'll grab this, drag it in here, get an instance of it, and attach it to the condition. So basically what we're saying is if we're moving forward, if we are not on the ladder, if we are on the ladder, so the condition is if we are on the ladder, if it is a fault statement, so we're not touching the ladder, we're just going to move normally, right? And if we are on the ladder, then what you'll do is you'll come up here and you'll type in set movement mode, and you'll switch this to flying, because I think by originally, if you look at the different options that you have, is walking, nav mesh walking, falling, and all that is actually coming from your first person character inherited. You'll actually, if you click on that and you look over here, you'll see walking, jumping, falling, movement, and all of this is because this is a character. It's a character BP blueprint. Okay, so we do need to set this to flying, and then what you'll do is you'll come down here, grab character mode, bring it in, and then attach it to the target. So then that way it knows what to put into flying. From there, what you'll need to do is click from here, drag out, type in add movement input, and what this allows us to do is actually get the up vector. So basically this will allow us to be able to change the WS to up and down, flying vertically or flying down, as opposed to it giving us the forward backward movement that we would have had if we were on the floor and in walking as opposed to flying. From there you'll go into world direction, drag out, type in get actor up vector, and then get player character. So the player character will be the target, so the game knows, so it knows which character this is going to be applied to. And then the get actor up will allow us to, again, like I said, make the WS go up and down as opposed to going forward or backwards. From there, the only other thing that we want to do with our first person character is actually make sure that when we are on the ladder, we can't go left or right. If you could imagine you're on a ladder, there's not really a lot of wiggle room left or right. All you really want to do is be able to go up or down. So what we're doing here, oh, and I also forgot something up there, which I'll talk about just a second. We're not going to attach anything to true, because if is on ladder is true, then we don't want to be able to have any additional movement. So by doing this, we're actually basically making it to where we don't have any left or right by negating the fact that we have made anything available for that. Now if we are not on the ladder and this is a fault statement, is on the ladder is a fault statement, then we get our normal left or right. So nothing really changed here except for a branch condition and an is ladder. And up here, the one thing that I forgot to say was that the axis value is going to need to come to the scale value, and then it's going to be also attached down here. So this one should have never have changed if all you did was move these things around or move them out of the way to create the other code. Now for anybody that's asking me how I created this, all you have to do is go to the line, select the line, and at any point on the line, if you double click, it will actually create another kind of, these are called, basically, it basically allows you to make another, they're there basically to help you keep your lines clean, so then that way you can actually see where it is. Now that's the reason why I actually put this a little bit closer. So if you want to, you can delete that, and in deleting so you'll see that I deleted the line, so let me reconnect that. And then once you've got these, you can obviously move them around and just help you draw out your lines a little bit better. So scale, that would go to scale value, and the other one would go to the scale value here. So basically with the first person character, that's it. That's all we had to do to the first person character. So we'll go ahead and compile and save just because I made some changes to that. Let's go back to the ladder, and now you will see where we got this. Now normally what would happen is you would come down here, find this, and find it and just drag it in, and instead of saying get an instance of, you would say set an instance of. But since it's not actually down there, what you'll have to do is right click, type in set is on, and if I could spell, or maybe and let's see where this is. Let's make this to where it is. Oh, okay, I know why it's not. So if you click and drag out, it will actually give you a list of stuff that's available for that character, and now we should be able to get set is on ladder. So you see that it comes in just like that. And once you have that, the top one needs to be checked, because when we make contact with the collision box, we definitely are on the ladder. That's why the collision box is there, to have something that we can interact to create the overlap effect, so then that way we can actually cast this to the first person player. And then the other thing we need to do is duplicate this, so you'll just do a Control-C, Control-V, drag that down here, make the connections, and then turn this one off. So then that way when we stop overlapping with the ladder's collision box, it sets our first person character back to is not on the ladder. The only other thing that we'll need to do is, because on the first person, when we go up the ladder, we switch it to flying mode, we need to switch back to walking mode. Otherwise our character will be left in the air floating around, as opposed to being on the floor where they're supposed to be after they are no longer making contact with the collision box. So with the first person BP, what you'll do is you'll drag off of here, you'll type in character movement, and if you scroll all the way underneath variables, because it is a variable, we'll go to character, and there it is right there, get character movement. And then you'll click off of this and you'll type in, so we would drag off of that and type in set movement mode. So set movement mode. You'll see there that it's underneath character movement, and you'll attach the set to this and that to the target, and you'll switch this back to walking. So with all that done, let's hit compile and save. And that's essentially it. That's all you need to do to be able to get this to work, at least in its very basic form. Obviously we don't have an animation that's going along with this. The gun will, oh, and one more thing actually, before we finish with this. Your normal walking speed is about 600, and actually let's go to our first person character real quick and we'll verify that. So we'll go to blueprints, first person character, go to character movement, and if you scroll, let's see, there's walking, and max walk speed is 600, right? So at 600, the other thing that we'll have to do is, if you scroll down just a little bit more, you'll actually see one up here called flying. And flying, we want two things to change. This is normally at 600. Obviously we don't run up ladders as fast as we can, what our max speed is. If I'm sprinting and my max speed is 600, I don't expect to climb up a ladder going 600. So I've actually reduced that down to 300, so then that way it feels a little bit more natural. We don't quite get up to the top of the ladder just as fast as we would if we hadn't. And then the other thing is braking deceleration flying, which basically means that it will allow us, this I think is normally at like 5 or something even lower. I think it's either at 0 actually. So I've set it to a value of 100, and basically what this will do is create a little bit, what feels like a little bit more gravity for the first person character as we're walking up the stairs. Otherwise it'll feel like we got up there way too quick. So let's go ahead and push play and we'll see this happen again. And what's neat is, obviously if I go here, you'll see that I can be very sneaky as far as like maybe I just want to get up to the top of the ladder, and that's what that 100 will allow you to be able to do. Is that 100 basically makes sure that I just don't go and go straight to the top of the ladder, right? So I can actually scroll down, I can be very gentle with my WASD, and this would allow me to almost kind of sneak up the ladder without actually being off of it. And there I fell off because I actually turned. And there we go. So now we have our walking, our vertical ladder that will allow us to be able to, if you place a ladder, to be able to get this to go. Okay, so that's basically it. That's how you make a ladder and are able to program a way to be able to get up the ladder and even kind of hang on the ladder for a while before you make it all the way up to the very top. Okay, I hope that helps, and you guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.